Hello, welcome back to my channel. My name is Kelsey and I'm here today to do my May wrap-up. So I'm filming with my new iPhone, so we'll see how this goes. The month of May was really weird for me. I did not read for a full week, but that was because I was enjoying my vacation. But the overall reads I had for the month just weren't amazing. They were not giving what needed to be gave, and I was not having the best of times with books. I definitely think I was in some sort of reading slump, but we'll get into it as I talk about the books that I read. Like usual, I like to get into my statistics because I just think they're fun and I think everybody likes them. So in the month of May, I read a total of 13 books, and that came out to 4,692 pages in total, and that averaged out to about 151 pages per day. So even though I had that whole week where I didn't really read, I still surpassed my goal of 100 pages per day, which is great and average. I also listened to 99 hours of audiobooks. You might not see that reflected in the format of the books because the books that I tend to read on audio and physically, I mark them down as physical reads. In regards to the rating, I read 0 5-star books, which is why this month was a bit slumpy for me, but I did read 7 4-star books. I then read 4 3-star books, 1 2-star book, and 1 1-star book, which averaged to about 3.46 stars in total. So not the best star rating, not the worst star rating, definitely in the middle there. In regards to the author identity, I read 8 female authors and 5 male authors. 7 of those books were adult books, 5 of them were YA, and 1 of them is a middle grade. And then just in regards to the format, like I was talking about, 5 books I read solely on audio, 2 were ebooks, and 6 were physical books, or a combination of the two. So I'm just going to start with a summary of the books that I read for videos. You can see these 3 books along with a volume of One Piece in my Can We Trust RM video. I really liked that video. I was really proud of it. I really enjoyed the majority of books in that vlog. One of them is a 1-star, so you can check that video out to see which ones didn't make the cut. The month of May was also time for the 3rd book in the Percy Jackson along that I host with my friend Honani, and we read Percy Jackson and the Titan's Curse. You can also see the vlog and reading sprints. I will link both of them up above and down below, just so you can get my overall full thoughts on the book, but I did really end up enjoying this one. And lastly, we have a book that I haven't talked about yet anywhere, but I read These Violent Delights by Chloe Gong. This was for my friend Lucy's book club. Why haven't I read this yet? And the live show is going to be the week that I post this, I believe.
It will be June 17th at 9:30 BST. Why am I like this?
So if you would like to hear my full thoughts on the book, I will be doing that live show. For now, I'll let you know that I rated this a 3.5 stars overall. I did really enjoy it, and I'm excited to talk about it with Lucy and my other friends. But let's get into the other books I read this month that I did not talk about yet. So the first one we'll get into is the arc I read for the month of May, and this was Just Like Mother by Anne Heltzel. This is a really weird book that follows 2 characters named Andrea and Maeve, and both of these characters escaped a cult from when they were younger. This cult was really around the motherhood and being a mom and that kind of thing. In the future timeline, present timeline, Andrea is on the verge of discovering something for women's fertility issues, and Maeve is kind of swept up into this company that is almost reminding her of her cult-like childhood. So I'm really conflicted by my feelings toward this book because the ending, and by the ending I mean the epilogue, was one of the eeriest things that I've come to read in a long time. And then the beginning of the novel, the prologue, was where we got to know Maeve's story along with her cousin Andrea's, and that was really interesting as well. The entire plot of the book was super interesting, and I think Heltzel's writing was really eerie and quick-paced. I definitely felt like I couldn't put down this novel. I definitely felt like I wanted to know what was happening. It was really engaging. The first 30% of the novel is really the build-up, and it has a really cult thrillery feeling to it that I really enjoyed. But you definitely need to suspend your disbelief when reading, because the novel really hinges on the fact that Maeve is naive and oblivious, and that you are too as a reader. Without going into details, there's so much of the story that doesn't make sense, and if you have even an ounce of awareness of what is going on, you as a character, if you were in this book, would have picked up what was going on very, very early into the novel. The mystery therefore becomes a chore to read, and I just wanted it to be over because I just could not believe that Maeve wasn't picking up on these things. I knew exactly what was going to happen. I knew how it was going to end. I do want to give credit to Heltzel as a writer because I did not trust 0% of any character in this entire book, and even though I kind of knew what was going on, I still didn't really expect the ending. But yeah, it was kind of a chore to read overall. I ended up giving this 2.5 stars. I would recommend if you're into cult-like thrillery books, but it definitely hinges on the fact that you need to kind of suspend your disbelief. After that, I picked up a book from my 30 Before 30 list, and this was The Yolk Club by Amy Tan. This book follows 4 mothers who immigrated to America from China, and together they kind of bond and form this group called the Yolk Club, where they talk about their experiences and what had happened to them. The book also follows 4 of their daughters and their experiences as American-born Chinese women. Going into this book, I knew that I wasn't going to give this anything less than a 4-star, and the book definitely kept up with that. It was a family saga. It specifically followed mother and daughter relationships. I knew this was going to fuck me up, and it definitely delivered on that. I did think Amy Tan did an excellent job painting the relationships between the mothers and daughters within the book, the relationships that the older generation experienced and their experiences in China, and how they are still there for each other in America through life and death, was heartfelt and difficult to read, especially when you start to look at and compare the way their American-born children act and behave. While I definitely understand the first generation experience, the way that we think and how we kind of try to softly push away our heritage, definitely was relatable, but nothing broke my heart more than reading about how the mothers were sad about their daughters being embarrassed of their moms and how the daughters tend to lash out because of it. And don't get me wrong, I definitely related to that, especially because I have totally been there and continue to lash out at my family for their mentality caused by their experiences. Still to this day, so I completely understand and relate to the daughters as well. The characters were all flawed, and because of that, and because they were so easy to relate to, I enjoyed that immensely in the novel. I also really loved how, despite the conflicts and generational differences, the families still found joy through the hardships that they were experiencing. I would highly recommend this. It was a short but really impactful read. I definitely flew through it. I think Amy Tan has really quick writing, and if you haven't picked up this modern classic, I would definitely urge you to do so because I thought it was really good. Another book I ended up picking up for my 30 Before 30 list was East of Eden by John Steinbeck. This is also another generational novel. It follows a bunch of families as they move to this like rich farmland settlement in the Salinas Valley in California, and how that affects their lives. It's kind of a retelling of the Bible, specifically the story of Cain and Abel kind of, and this is heralded to be like one of John Steinbeck's most amazing novels. Not sure if I agree with that. This book is so well loved, and I'm saddened to say that I did not enjoy it as much as I think a lot of people do. I did go into this knowing that I would love the writing. I really enjoy John Steinbeck's writing. The previous book I read from him, Of Mice and Men, is like one of my favorite classics and one of the classics I remember having the most fun reading in high school. And that's because the language used in the book and John Steinbeck's writing is so easily accessible. And I would definitely say the same for this book as well. Despite how much I enjoy the writing though, I just think this book is boring. And sometimes that's what it is with classics. I don't need to go into a classic, read it, and be like, oh yes, the literary capacities of this novel. Sometimes they're just boring. Like I said, I understand that this book is asking philosophical questions through looking at rural American families and retelling the Bible. But as much as the synopsis of the novel and the themes that the novel is presenting sound appealing, I just did not enjoy my time with this novel, and that's okay. It happens sometimes. The only real aspect of the novel that I enjoyed is specifically Kathy's character. I think she's supposed to be this evil version of Eve in the Bible, depending on your expectations and beliefs of Eve. I think she's more evil than Eve. Some people think Eve is the ultimate evil. She's extremely evil. And I'm going to say it, and it sounds repetitive, but Steinbeck wants you to know she's evil. She murders, she shoots people, she runs a brothel, blah, blah, blah. Every sin that a woman could commit, Eve does. And that's why I liked her. It made the novel more interesting. It made the story more interesting. Kathy was a character I did not come into the book thinking I would root for. But honestly, she was keeping the plot going. I also really liked the struggles that the children faced being her kids, Cal specifically. I think it was a really interesting discussion. The ending of the entire book was kind of satisfying, so like I guess it ended on a interesting and good note. Overall, I think this novel was really long. I think it touched upon a lot of interesting things, but didn't give me the most of what I needed, so I ended up giving this a 3 stars. After that, I picked up a really highly anticipated novel for me. This is Yolk by Mary H.K. Choi. I really enjoyed Mary H.K. Choi's first 2 novels, Emergency Contact specifically more, and Yolk definitely gave me those vibes. Yolk follows 2 sisters, one named Jane and one named June, and the sisters have kind of grown apart over the years, but come together once they find out that June has cancer. I'm not gonna go further into the story, just know that Jane and June are kind of like opposite sisters, and that is why they were kind kind of separated for quite a while, but they really come together in order to help June. And as usual, I enjoyed this book from Mary H.K. Choi a lot. She just has a way with characters that I really appreciate. Something I mentioned earlier on in the video with the Joy Luck Club is that I really like flawed characters. I think flawed characters are really important in books. And Mary H.K. Choi, I think, does an excellent job at creating flawed characters that are extremely jarring to read from at first. That's what makes them really realistic to me, and that's what makes me relate to them a lot more, because they have a sense of meaning or feel meaningful to me because they're going through things and act horrific. And I think that that is what a real person would do. Another element I love about Choi's novels is her family relationships. In this one in particular, obviously, I really appreciated the relationship between the sisters. It's something that I always love in books, and this book was no exception. Jane and June have a realistic sibling relationship, and while that can be tough to read, particularly in this book because June is struggling with cancer and Jane is struggling with an eating disorder, it can be really tough to read. The sisters have their own personal issues to go through, right? But the way that they are there for each other and problem solve for one another was realistic. It really hit a spot for me. I also really enjoyed the side relationship in the novel that involves Jane. I think it was pretty maturely added into the novel. I don't think it deterred away from the overall themes and the sister relationship in the story. I think it just added to Jane's overall character, which I really appreciated. The plot is a simple slice of life novel that just follows the two sisters as they kind of reignite their bond and navigate their strained relationship along with their own issues. But I think Choi continues to impress me with every novel she writes, and I give this 4 stars. Really enjoyed it. I would say there is a big trigger warning for eating disorders in the book because the synopsis really focuses on the fact that June has cancer, but I think that Jane's relationship with an eating disorder is just as prevalent. So just a small trigger warning before you go into this book. After that, I did my reread of The Assassin's Blade by Sarah J. Maas. This is the novella series that takes place before the first book, Throne of Glass, and follows Selena Sardothian as she is the world's best assassin, and these missions that she goes on that shape her character and lead her to where we see her at the beginning of Throne of Glass. Overall, I think this novel deserves a 3 stars simply because it is a collection of novellas, so some are better than others, and I just feel like novellas are always usually in the middle for me. Because I am rereading the series as well, the collection of novellas don't really have that strong of an impact on me because I already know what's happening and what's going on with the characters. I think that if this is read before starting the series, it would have a greater impact on its readers, so I definitely recommend reading it beforehand. The characters that appear later have more of an impact on readers, especially for the last novella. Readers of the series who jump into this later on don't have that much of a lasting impact with one of the specific characters, so I find that the last novella would be more impactful if you have a long and lasting relationship with that character beforehand. I don't know if that makes sense, but basically what I'm saying is that you don't have this understanding of Selena's characters and how she ends up later on, so the impact of the last novella works better because it is your first instance of sadness in a way, is what I'm trying to say. For full disclosure, I am rereading this series to see how early on Sarah J. Maas connects things from her later works into these books. The connections that I found in the book are more of a nod to the later books in the Throne of Glass series rather than the Maas universe as a total. Overall, this book was fun to read. It's interesting to see Selena's beginnings, but I don't find it necessary to read. I don't think it's that important to read this before going into the Throne of Glass series, so if you skipped it, I think that's fine. This month, I finished the Athena Club series with The Sinister Mystery of the Mesmerizing Girl by Theodora Goss, and I love this like I've loved every book in the series. If you haven't been following my TBRs or my wrap-ups since the beginning of January, I'll get into a brief synopsis of what this is about, but it basically follows a girl named Mary Jekyll who finds out one day that she has a sister named Diana Hyde. Those two, along with Sherlock Holmes and Watson, work together to kind of figure out what Mary Jekyll's father has been doing, and that leads them to form the Athena Club, as they find out that a lot of literary giants that we know have created daughters that are kind of monstrous. So as with the first 2 novels, like before, I had a great time reading this. I've said it twice and I'll just say it again that I love how Theodora Goss writes her characters, and I love how Kate Redding narrates them. I think Kate Redding does an excellent job with the audiobooks, so if you haven't listened to them on audio, I would recommend. They are so spunky and so fun, and I truly can't help myself from smiling throughout the book. I think this was a great way to end the trilogy. The story, while feeling independently unique, also tied to the other novels and wrapped it up in a way that made sense, that was clear, that added to the story overall. I also really appreciated how Theodore Goss added additional literary characters to this book. While the previous two novels shared characters that I was familiar with, the finale brought forth characters that I had never heard from classics that I didn't even know existed. And as mentioned several times, every time I summarize these books, it's honestly quite annoying. I am an English major. I do have an English degree. So anything that nods to the literary canon excites me. I think it's really interesting. So obviously I'm going to enjoy the series overall. And the way that this book ended makes me feel that Theodora Goss might write more in this series. If she doesn't, I'm definitely going to pick up anything she writes. I love that she's passionate about the literary genre, as am I. So I love this, gave it 4 stars. Would highly recommend this series if you haven't picked it up yet. And the last book I picked up this month was another nod to my 30 before 30 list. This is Norwegian Wood by Haruki Murakami. Me and this man have been having a fight this month. This book essentially follows 2 characters, one named Toru and one named Nayoko, but it really follows Toru, as do most of Haruki Murakami's books. They tend to follow a sad, depressed boy. Toru and Nayoko have lost a friend, a really close person to them. And while Nayoko is kind of really struggling with this, Toru at the same time, like, he is struggling. Obviously he lost a friend, but his struggles are more internal facing. He deals with it in other ways, and that's all I really want to say about the novel, because like with most Haruki Murakami books, they are really focusing on the characters themselves and not necessarily this like grand plot. So like I said, me and Haruki Murakami are frenemies at this point. I love his writing. I always love his writing. I love his melancholy tones in the books, but I hate the way that he writes women, and I'm getting so tired of his exploration of sex in the novels. This was by far better than a lot of the recent Haruki Murakami books that I've read, but still some of the scenes in here were just unnecessary. But if we disregard the unnecessary sex scenes, I identified a lot with the themes presented in the novel. The novel is so involved within its characters that it can come off quite boring, but I think Haruki Murakami has a really engaging writing style that the book can keep you with no plot if you're into that sort of thing. If you're into character explorations, I think that you will still enjoy this book. I identified so much with the discussions surrounding the characters, and I don't know what that says about me, but it definitely made me enjoy the book a lot more. I definitely recommend this book if you're looking for like a sad kind of coming of age novel for Toru, even though he is a university student. I think he's going through like a transition in his life. I guess Haruki Murakami won me over again. I gave this 3.5 stars because I can't get past the weird sex scenes, but I really did enjoy this. Probably will pick up another Haruki Murakami. Here we go. He pulls me back in again. And that's it. Those are all of the books I read in the month of May. If you've read any of these books, please let me know down below. Did you like them? Did you hate them? I would like to know. And if you would like to follow me on any of my other social medias, I do leave a link down below to my Twitter, Goodreads, and Instagram if you would like to follow me there. But because it is the end of the video, please do not forget to like, subscribe, and ring the notification bell. As usual, it makes me feel really good. It does a lot for my channel, and I really appreciate it. But I never know how to end these things, so I will see you next time. Bye!